I just watched Turning Red on a whim this morning, and I'm so glad I did. I try to go into new animated films with no expectations, and this one completely blew me out of the water. It's a great story for all ages about family, friendship, and finding yourself. This is the first Pixar film directed by a woman, Domi Ishii, the first story to take place in Canada, and the second Pixar film featuring an Asian lead. So if you haven't seen it, the premise of the story is a young girl named Mei is starting to desire independence and recognize her own wants and needs, separate from that which her family expects of her. She spent her life up to this point behaving exactly as expected, spending every day after school taking care of her family's temple, getting good grades, and not seeing her friends outside of school very often. And after an emotional series of events, she turns into a red panda, and finds out the women in her family all received this ability in their teenage years. Now, I gave you that, but I really think that you should go watch this movie before you watch the rest of this video, because I'm going to be discussing the story and the characters, and I think this is definitely worth experiencing without spoilers or too much pre-existing context. So go give it your time, and I'll still be here when you're done. And discussion begins now. The first way in which this movie dodged my expectations was in how Mei's friends reacted to her panda form. This isn't the keep my ability a secret story that I grew up seeing over and over again. Mei's friends embrace her and actually love her panda form because they love her. And when the precedent for the story is a long line of coming-of-age media where the protagonist only tells a few friends about their struggle, it's really refreshing to see Mei's panda be adored by the entire school and not something she has to hide from them. Instead, it's her mother who struggled with the same ability and felt pressure to keep it a secret, passing that pressure down to her daughter, even though Mei doesn't really feel like she needs to keep the panda a secret. I also love the representation in this film and the many different ways people can feel represented through this film. Mei's family is Chinese, Mei's friend group is diverse racially and in personality, and most prominently and universally, this movie puts the awkward phase of teenagerdom in the spotlight. Most of the movies that I grew up on that were about female characters featured strongly sexualized teenage girls, and that's a poor example to set. Instead, this story allows Mei and her friends to be normal teenagers, with crushes that don't become the focus of the plot, awkward secret spicy drawings, and cute accessories. And while this is probably more relatable to people who are socialized female, I think most of us know what it's like to feel the pressure to hide a part of yourself from the world, whether it's some facet of your identity, your pain, or just the things you like. And despite it being a small detail in the scheme of the film, I loved the inclusion of period talk between Mei and her mother. I've never seen a period kid animated like that before, and it's really healthy to include and normalize these discussions. Half of all the humans are dealing with this, and for some reason we have to endure it in secret. It shouldn't be that way, and I hope more media for kids addresses it casually. That being said, I remember seeing speculation about this film being a metaphor for getting your period, and while I understand the interpretation, I honestly just think it's a story about a girl who turns into a panda. But if you know any rituals that can make me stop bleeding every month, let me know, because doctors aren't gonna help me out there, just in case my husband wants children in 10 years. We sure do live in an equal society. Anyway, similar to how I felt about Encanto, the focus on breaking patterns, adjusting expectations, and healing generational trauma really hit home for me. Growing up in a non-white home with generations of enforced tradition and rigid expectations of behavior and academic performance is a lot to handle, especially when the world is changing rapidly around us. I honestly don't think the crying ever stopped once it started for me around the last half hour. I had a feeling that Mei would reject the ritual and claim her panda as part of herself rather than something to be purged, but I definitely was not expecting to see all the women in Mei's family reawaken that part of themselves too. The scene in the forest where Mei found her mother's teenage self and guided her home as she grew up was stunning. It wasn't just Mei changing and leaving behind her family's traditions and trauma. She carried the women in her family with her and helped her mother and her grandmother heal and be at peace with each other. And there's something really beautiful about the baby of the family healing everyone else around her instead of having to leave them all behind in order to be herself. More of this, please. I don't really want to do a character analysis of this film or talk about if the characters are queer-coded or the other stuff I normally do. I just want to share my joy at this movie's existence and exposure in popular culture. I love the art style with the female faces that aren't afraid to squash and stretch and get ridiculous. I love the characterization, I love the story, I love the boy band. Apparently some of the songs were written by Billie Eilish. It's just overall a wonderful show of artistry alongside all of these other points that I've made. I think that the story is going to do a lot of good, especially for the young people watching it and growing up with it, and I'm happy to see money being put in for a Chinese protagonist and family, just like I was to see a Colombian cast in Encanto. BIPOC people watch movies too. Representation is incredibly important for young people, and films like this one give me a little bit of hope for the future, even when things are bleak. So go watch this movie, it's great. I give it like a 9 out of 10. That's all for today, folks. I'm working on some larger scale projects, including several retrospectives, so I may pepper in some shorter videos like this to keep things fun and to feel like less of a bad YouTuber. Let me know your thoughts on Turning Red in the comments or on Twitter once you've seen it. Subscribe for more videos, and I also have a Patreon linked alongside everything else in the description if you want access to my Discord server and what I'm working on. Stay hydrated, take care of yourself, tell your friends you love them, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!
I am the queen of the universe. The waves tug. They engulf me in the waters warm. Can I ask you kind of a weird question?